Today there are many tools available for designers to build different things and present it with the clients or different stakeholders, right?
Mhm.
So the when we talk about fundamentals is that you use anything. You use Photoshop, you use Illustrator, you use Sketch, you use Figma. There are a lot of similarities in them. In all of them you can create shapes. In all of them you can create text layers. In all of them you can tweak the sizes, do all those things. So there are similarities. You can organize layers, you can group them, right? But it is very important for us, for you, to understand all those fundamental aspects, so that tomorrow if the new tool comes in the industry, you won't wonder that, okay, will I be able to use that tool or not? No, any tool comes, the fundamentals are same. You can create shapes, you can create text, all those things are similar, very similar, right? They are already only being optimized for different contexts and different use cases. For example, for Photoshop you want to manipulate with the photos, so all those things are contextually optimized for that intent. When you talk about Figma, when you talk about XD and all, they are optimized for you to create UI elements on the screen. So you really need to learn those fundamentals really, really well and build it as your muscle memory. So that you should not think about, okay, how to create a shape or how to create certain design elements. That should be your muscle memory, so that when you're doing UX design, you can focus on solving the problems, ideating on the problems, and executing on it in a refined manner, so that how do I do it is not a question anymore for you. That's why learning the tool fundamentals is very, very important. So my question is, if you have used different design tools, my simple question for you is, what is the difference between vector graphics and raster graphics? See, both the images on the left and right are same, but the left one is vector, the right one is raster. If you zoom in on the vector, you'll see there is no loss of quality. On the right side, if you zoom on the raster image, you'll see it is getting pixelated. That you will see in a lot of images which are JPG, PNG, BMB, because they are composed of pixels. And if you enlarge pixels, if you zoom in on pixels, it will look pixelated, obviously. But on the other side, the vector images or vector graphics are composed of paths and points. So whatever zoom level you are, zooming in, it will not lose the quality, because it is not dependent on the pixel. For example, SVG, EPS, AI. So you use for raster images, you use basically Photoshop. For vector images, you use basically Illustrator for vector images, right? For graphic design. Now, when we come to UX design, when we come to that user interface design, now here we are talking about, we want to design screens, and we want to design scalable elements in the screen that we can reuse also later. So we'll be talking about primarily vector type of graphics when we are working on user interface design tools. So all the things, the buttons, the cards, the different panels, they are all vectors. They are all rectangles, right? What are the goals of using a design tool, right? The most basic goal is to create elements. I want to create a shape, I can create. I want to create a text layer, I can create. I want to group the elements, I can do that. But what's the other goal in context with user interface design? You use some smart features and accelerators to accelerate your execution process, right? For example, when you design screens, right, you will be using one kind of button, one kind of style in different screens, one kind of textiles in different screens. So you don't want to reinvent the wheel again and again and create that shape again and again, create put the text layer under it again and again and changing the color, right? So you want to accelerate that execution process, right, by using different smart features, accelerators, right? And you also want to ensure consistency. For example, here I'm using blue color of this hex code. On the 10th screen, I also want to use the same color, not the different color. They want to ensure that consistency, not only for colors, but for everything, all the other parameters and properties, right? You want to design for reusability. I don't want to create things again and again. I want to reuse them. If I have created something once, I want to reuse them. For example, buttons, you want to reuse buttons. Icons, you want to reuse icons, right? And then design for scalability. You want to design something that you can scale up for different sizes, because in user interface context, we talk about different screen sizes. You want to make something that you can scale also. What tool should be used, right? That's a big question, because there is Figma, there is XD, there is SketchUp, right? So my answer to that would be that a designer can choose any tool according to their preferences, right? We have one recommendation, which is Figma, based on these reasons, right? It is platform independent. So if you have a MacBook, or if you have Windows system, or even if you have some Android Chromebook, you don't need to worry about it. It's platform independent. If you have a browser, you can run it. It is extremely scalable, and it is easy to collaborate as a team. So at a single time, in a single artboard, in a single page, multiple people can collaborate as at a single time. And you have quick access to various plugins created by vibrant design community. They have launched at 2012, but they have improved and evolved significantly faster. So yeah, you'll see vibrant set of plugins that you can use to accelerate your design even more. And you can create complete design artifacts that then and there only. Previously in Sketch, you used to create screens in Sketch, but you used to use InVision to
Flow.
present it
Yeah.
and inspect it. It used to take a lot of time. What these folks say that no, we don't want to do that. We want to do that in one single space, so that designers do not need to worry about technological limitations. They can focus on their work, and they can update and implement the feedback in the real time, and they can show. So it saves a lot of time. So let's look at basic design features. So the best way to learn is to practice it. So let's directly jump into Figma only. So this is Figma, right? It is very, very easy. So let me introduce this to you, right? This is the file name Figma class, right? On the left, you have all the tools that you will need to in order to create something. Okay. On the left, you have the list of all the things that you are creating, all the layers. So you understand difference between layer and groups, right? A layer can be either a shape or a text layer or a line, and a group can be group of layers and group of groups. Okay, those all things will be listed here under this layer list. But there is one more functionality here, which is page. So even before page, I would like to introduce you to frames, right? So frames are basically artboards. If you are familiar with Illustrator or Photoshop, you have a big page, empty page, in which if you want to create on a canvas, you call it something. In this case, you call it frame. In other contexts, you call it artboards as well. So you can simply go to this icon and you can create that frame. And you can change the parameters on the right. But once you click here, you get all the
Six.
most relevant sizes that are there for phones, different devices, right? Tablets, desktop, and all those things. You can create any of it, right? So desktop, you have 1440, it's created, right? Now here you can design your stuff. So inside a page, you can have frames, you can have layers, you can have groups, right? Now you can have multiple pages. For example, this is one page, right, in which you can organize your different frames. You can have different pages also, right? So you can create a new page, and you can create artboards here, and that way you can organize. Where will it be helpful? If you want to organize all your icons here, you can say that I am organizing all the icons here on the page one. I'll rename it to screens, and I can organize all the screens here. Inside page, you have frames, layers, everything, and every element that you have on the screen will be listed here in the layer list. let's see this frame, right? So here we have what, 5 rectangles. These are the 5 rectangles on the left. If I want to group it, I can group it. I can expand and see, or I can collapse and I can make this as one group. So those functionalities are there. You can view it or hide it. You can lock it and all those things, right? Now, interestingly, on the right side, whatever you have is the properties panel, you can say. So for the elements, right? So if you select a frame, you can see all the properties of that frame here, right? If you select a shape, if you select a group, you can see all the properties of it here. If you select a shape, you can see all the properties of it here, right? So always remember, if you want to create something, you will go left top. If you want to see what are things that are there, you will see left. If you want to see what is the properties of a particular thing, you will go right. So you can play with the tools here. You have different shapes that you can create. You have pen tool also, with which you can create, manual shapes, whatever you want, right? You have text, so you can create text layer also. These are basics, right? So let's talk about properties a little bit. So for example, I have selected a rectangle. So I'm seeing its x-axis, its position. So if I can change it from here, it will start moving, right? And I can change it from here also, like this, right? Flexibility. You have width, you have height, you have rotation, you have rounded corners if you want to make it rounded, right? And we'll also talk about constraints. That's also very interesting. And then you have all the other properties. Sorry. So how much opacity do you want? 100%, 50%, right? What is the fill? So it has only fill currently. You want to add stroke, you can add. You can add different effects like drop shadow and all, right? So those all the things that are there, and you can remove them as well. So these are basic things, right? How to create and how to organize. If we keep following that practice only, it will take us a lot of time to create different screens, because a lot of things are repeated. We'll need to create some rules about placements. We need to create some rules about what colors we'll be using, what properties we'll be using, all those things, right? So let's get into accelerators, right? For example, let's take the example of most frequent component that we use in a user interface. So let's create a button. So I have already created that for you. But let me create a new one because I want to show you an interesting accelerator. So what I'll do is I'll create a rectangle and I'll create a text layer, right? I'll say submit, right? With the combination of these both, we can create a button, right? So remember what you see what I did. I had to reduce the size of it to make sure that the spacing between left and right is okay, right? So what you can do is you can select this guy. You can click on this auto layout here. If you click it, it makes it automatic for you. So tomorrow, if you want to change the text and say just okay, it is doing the work for you. It is adjusting the width for you. And you can see all the rules that are there. So when it says 10, so it's spacing, right? Once you open this particular guy here, you can see all the spacing. On the left, you see spacing is 56, right? So you select a layer, and if you want to see the distance or anything, you simply press Alt, and you can hover on the other element, and you can see all the, if it is distance or spacing, you can discover that. And if you want to create a rule about it here, you can do it. So you can change from 56 to 64 and 64, and it will be updated there. And then you can change it to submit or whatever you want, right? So that's one basic accelerator that you have that lets you automatically change the width, because that's the most common use case for buttons and also other UI elements. Let's look at the other accelerator, which is, you see these things here, rectangles. Are they in proper spacing? But when you are creating UI elements, user interface, if you are giving different spaces, then you will need to think, okay, what spacing I'll give here, what spacing I'll give here, what spacing I'll give here, what spacing I'll give here. Rather, what you can do is you can create a rule and you can follow that. For which, if you want to use the same kind of spacing for everything, you can just click on tidy up and it's aligned. And you can see the spacing here. And you can tweak it. You can tweak it from here. So it is very flexible, or you can tweak it from here. So it's very flexible. From anywhere, you can do anything in fact. I want to use buttons a lot of times. So do I need to create rectangle again and do the same thing? No, right? I want to use the same guy in different places, right? What I'll do is I'll create a component. So this particular icon represents creating a creation of a component. So I'll go ahead and create that. What components are? They are reusable elements. So now if I make a copy of it, I can do that, right? So whichever component has the title on top of it is actually the master component, and everything else, the copies that you are making, are the instances of it. Okay, and let's now understand what that means. If you change anything on the master, that will be reflected in all the instances that you have. Okay, and it cannot be the otherwise. So if you are changing the color in an instance, it will not reflect in your master. So that's the difference between a master component and a instance of it. Okay, so you can change all the properties. You can change the property of text still, right? So I'll go ahead and make it black, and it is done.
Okay.
So you can change in a component, you can change all the properties and sizes. So size is also a property, right? What will be intact is the content, and to
Okay.
be exact with the content, it's just the text. So for example, there is one screen in which I want to put submit button, I can put it. I want to create another screen in which I want to put what, something else, not submit but save,
Login. Okay.
login, whatever, right? So I can do it. Now I change my mind, or somebody gave me feedback that colors are not working, there is accessibility issue. I can go to master, I can change it, and it is now readable across different screens that I have created. So that's the component. Now what you can do is you can create variations of different component, right? So by that, what I mean is, let's delete this rough one and let's use this one. What I have done is I have given a stroke and a rounded corner, right? But this is normal button. In a lot of cases, you will also be needing another kind of buttons, right? For example, let me create another button for you. Oh, I already have it. So let me pull that. Yeah. So for example, this is the normal state for a button, but this is the disabled state, because in a lot of cases, you need a button which is disabled, right? So now, if in this screen, I'm using this button, but in one of these states, I want to keep the state what? Disabled.
Is it
What I will go here go is, I can click on this drop down here and change it from normal to disabled, and that's done. So what you are creating is, you are creating variations of a particular component. So this is one variation that says normal. There is another variation that says disabled, right? So you can use any of those, and because of the naming conventions, pay attention, right? What I have written is component slash button slash primary slash normal. So by slash, what I'm doing is I'm making further divisions. So here also it is buttons, component slash button slash primary slash disabled. So because I did that, it is giving me a drop down here. If I change it anytime, right? So if I change the name of this guy, I remove primary, then it won't show me in the drop down. It is gone. So if the
So,
structure is same, you can quickly swap it anywhere, anytime. Let's talk about nested components. You can have components inside a component. For example, if you create a particular component, let's say pop-up, in which you want to use a component which is submit, which is button. So now what it says that you want to reuse pop-up in which you want to reuse different buttons, right? So one case is this in which you are saying submit. Let's talk about the other one in which you don't want to use submit. You want to say right. So you have two different variations. Let's create three, right? Let's say this is okay. So how it is helpful for you now? If you want to change the title in all the pop-ups that you have, you'll go ahead here. You'll say updated title. You have it everywhere. Where you have different changes also intact. Here you have save intact. Here you have okay intact. So that's component inside a component. That's the benefit of it. And if you are confused, the only thing that you need to do is practice. So that's the power of components. You can put components inside a component. Another use case is this. I have created three icons and I have made them as components. One I'm saying rectangle, one I'm saying circle, one I'm saying, what is this? Triangle, right? Now, there will be cases in which you will be using buttons with icons. For example, this guy. Now, inside this component, you have another component, which is this icon, right? So if you are creating another instant and you want to change the icon there,
there will be drop down.
right, you'll get a drop down and you'll be able to change from rectangle to circle. So now let's take this pop-up as an example. And let's say you are designing for different screens, right? Now,
Mhm.
if you resize, yeah, so by default, it will be like this. Let me delete these guys for now. Yeah. So by default, what happens is whenever you are trying to enlarge a particular frame or any rectangle or anything, uh, for example, this is for phone you have done. And let's design the same thing for desktop in which you will want to increase the width of it, right? But what you want to do is you want to keep the spacing from right corner to the button intact, right? What you can do, you can click on submit. I mean that particular component, you can, constraints, you can use this guy, constraints and resizing. You can say align to right. Now you go ahead and resize things. It will be snapping to the right side. And these things are snapped to the left, so they'll always be on the left. Same thing you can do top and bottom. So that's another kind of accelerator for you to save your time. Let's talk about styles, right? So when we talk about reusable elements, there are two ways. One is component with which you can create different elements, reusable elements. With styles, you can create reusable properties. For example, I want to define a hex code that I want to use across, right? For different things. What I'll do is, for example, here I want to keep the color of it little gray, right? I'll go ahead and make it little gray. What I'll say is, okay, yeah, let's not do that in an instance. Let's do that on a master one. So what I'll do is I'll change the color. I want to use this gray in different places. So for style, you need to go to style, which is represented by 4 dots. You go there and then you click on plus, and then you can go on styles and you can say light gray, right? Now tomorrow, if you are saying that I'm creating something inside this particular screen, let's say I'm creating a rectangle or something, and I want to keep use the same gray there. What I'll simply do is I'll create the rectangle, I'll go to styles, I'll click on the gray, and it is applied, right? I want to use the same color for my this guy button. I'll go ahead, I'll click here. So right now already a style is applied here, but I want to apply the another one, this gray. I can use that, right?
Mm.
Yeah. So remember, both things are usable. Styles also, components also, but components apply for the elements, styles apply for the properties of those elements. Okay.
Okay.
Style means color, stroke, font. So yeah, let's talk about text styles, right? So this has monster art, this is semi bold, this is white. I want to create a text style out of it. I want to say it's a button style. I'll go to text styles, I'll click out button, I'll say button style. Yeah, button style, create. So it's done. So tomorrow, if I'm creating new layers of some sort, I want to use the same style there. Okay, it's applied already, but if it is not, let's say I created something and it is something else, roboto, let's say, right? But I want to use the same style that I used in my CTA. I'll click here, I'll go to styles, I'll apply that. Click on the style and it will be applied. Best practices using the grid in a file. So you see these columns here. So if you create a grid, you basically use grids for arranging elements on a screen, right? And we'll be talking about it in detail in our grids and layouts class. But I want to introduce it to you so that when you are doing your next task, you are aware of it. So here grids are used to create larger containers of information. For example, when you see different thumbnails of articles in different websites, those are containers inside which you will have information, for which you use this grid. So you will snap those containers on the columns of the grid, but you don't do it for smaller things. For example, the content inside the container, right? For which you will use rules like spacing, how much spacing should be there, right? Box model. So from left it should be 18, from top it should be 24. It's like that. So for larger containers, you use columns of grids. For things inside a container or smaller components, you don't use it. Okay. So you
I
should
think.
always follow a systematic approach to name different elements. So let's take this example. It's a BEM model, box, element, and modifier. So
Mhm.
are you looking at this house here? So that house represents a block. Inside which what do you have? You have doors and you have windows. Those are what? Elements inside that particular block. And
Okay.
then the color of the window, the color of the door. What are those? Those are modifiers. So let's take the example here. Block slash element slash modifier. For example, if you are creating a table, then table is the block, a row of it is a element, and modifier is its state, whether it's active or disabled or clicked and all those things. So
Mhm.
now let's go back to our Figma file, right? So you see I had used some names. So here you read
Okay.
it. It's component slash button slash primary slash normal. So here the
Yes.
component is a
Block.
block, button is a sub block, primary is an element of it, and normal is a modifier. And normal can be disabled, normal can be hover, normal can be anything, right? Any other state that is there. So if you follow this, you'll be able to quickly swap the instances in any screen very, very quickly from the drop down here. That's why structuring and following this practice is very, very important. You can also prototype your screens in Figma only. You don't need to go anywhere else. So for which you need to simply, what you need to simply do is, if you want to say, I want to click on this element button, I want to go somewhere, you will simply click on prototype mode from the right top here. You
Okay.
can add interaction from here. You will click on plus. You'll say what this is the nature. So nature is the click, and what happens when you click, you can set from here. So I'll click on this. I'll say navigate to, right? Navigate to where? Then I'll say, okay, the screens above is frame 11, right? So yeah, let's select that. So now it is connected to that frame 11. Okay, here, I'll make it closer. So you want to say that when I'm clicking here, it is going here. So yeah, and if you click on preview now, you'll be able to see that. So let it load. So which screen? Yeah. So if I click on submit, I'm going there. So that's how you can put up the interactions. Okay.